Hi, welcome to today's Courageous Question. I'm Peggy Oliveira. Today's question came from Jody, and Jody shared some about her background to give me some context for her question. And I want to answer this question in kind of a broader context. So, Jody shared abuse by a family member and kind of talked a little bit about how over the course of years, the relationship has continued and feeling that she's in a place that the relationship is good. And wondering are you able to really heal if you still have a relationship with your abuser? So that's kind of the question. And I know for many of you, I know for myself, that was a huge thing. It wasn't necessarily something that I thought a lot about, like, am I ever going to be able to heal if I have a relationship with my abuser? But it's definitely something that is there. And I think is relevant for almost everybody who's been abused, unless your abuser is no longer in your life. And that's true whether the abuser was a family friend or somebody in your family, or somebody that you have regular contact with. So ultimately, is it possible to heal if you still have a relationship with your abuser? This is a complicated question to answer because there's so many factors that play a role in how much you can actually heal if you maintain a relationship with your abuser. Some of it has to do with you, some of it has to do with the abuser, and some of it has to do with the people around you. So there's really a lot of things to consider. So there isn't a clear yes or no. So I think that that's something to really keep in mind. And this is something that I think is important to be able to speak with your therapist, the person who's really helping you heal, to really talk with that person about the nuances involved in your specific relationship. So I do want to say that. Though I do want to kind of talk a little bit more generally too, because there are some things that I think are important. So can you heal if you have a relationship with your abuser? I think that you can do a lot of really important healing if you have a relationship with your abuser. I don't know. Well, I guess I'll say it this way. I think that you can do a lot of really great healing. I think that you can get to a place that you're doing well, feel pretty good, and all of that. I think that as long as you have a relationship with your abuser, with a caveat that I'll talk about in a second, I think there's going to be some pieces that you won't be able to fully heal if you maintain a relationship with your abuser. However, those pieces do not have to be significant things that greatly affect your life, that keep you from being able to be happy, be in a good relationship, and live your life in a way that you deserve to be able to live it. So for the most part, that's my thought about it. Yes, you can do a lot of great healing, feel good about your life, do pretty well, not struggle with abuse on a daily basis, but there will be some pieces that you likely won't be able to heal. So I want to talk a little bit more about that though. I mentioned a caveat. If your abuser has accepted full and complete responsibility for what they've done, and they've apologized for what they've done, which is incredibly rare, And when I say take full responsibility, that means no, we were close in age. No, but you didn't seem to mind. No, I was drinking and didn't know what I was doing. So no rationalizing whatsoever. If that person can look you in the eye and say, I am so incredibly sorry for what I did to you. It was never your fault. You never did anything to make me do that. I was wrong. I'm sorry. I've gotten help. Like, no excuses, no rationalizing, no trying to make you forgive them even. Like being able to say, I understand if you don't forgive me. That's important. If the person can do that, which again is incredibly unlikely to happen, I'm not saying it can't happen, but it's incredibly unlikely. But if it does happen, then going forward, you can heal some of these other pieces with help, with a lot of work, and really importantly, with the right type of help. Okay. So given that the likelihood of that happening is incredibly rare, I want to talk about the reality of what this typically is going to look like. So if the abuser is still in your life, if you've confronted them and maybe they kind of accepted, maybe they didn't accept at all, then you have to do the work with a therapist around how that feels, what that means to you, how it feels to be around that person, to determine whether being around that person is reinforcing all of the damage that was created, all of the beliefs that you've ended up believing about yourself because of what happened. You need to determine, are you in a place in terms of healing where you can set really clear boundaries and feel good about setting those boundaries, reinforce those boundaries, and continue to do the healing because you've set a boundary around what you're okay with in this relationship. If you've confronted that person and that person denies it, blames you, rationalizes it, whatever, then I think it's a lot harder because, or if you don't confront that person, though there's some differences there, but if you've confronted that person or said something to that person and they've denied it or whatever, it's not just about setting a boundary. It's about having to really do a lot of work around healing that piece in particular. Because whenever you're around that person, if they haven't accepted responsibility or suggested to you that it didn't happen, then every time you're around that person, even if it's not conscious, on a subconscious level, you're pretending that what you know to be true isn't true or may not be true. That this person is telling you that you're lying, telling you that it's not a big deal. And that's important because on a subconscious level, to some degree, possibly even an unconscious level, you're denying your truth. And when we deny our truth, what we know to be true and real, there's a disconnect. And in some ways, we're telling that child within us that continues to exist within us, you're telling her or him that what happened doesn't matter. And that's why working with a therapist and really doing a lot of healing work around making sure that that part of you knows that you do matter, that she or he mattered at the time and has mattered all along, then again, boundaries can come into play and help significantly. If that person outright denies it, tells you you're lying, those kinds of things, generally speaking, in that case, I think it's really important to not have a relationship with that person. Maybe there's some work that can be done to get you to a place that you can maybe be around that person, but not really have much of a relationship. So if around certain functions that person is around, if you've done a lot of work, you've got boundaries within yourself, you don't engage, you don't tolerate certain types of things that make you feel uncomfortable, with the right help, you might be able to get to a place that you can be in that situation without being wounded again, without having all of that wounding and those beliefs reinforced. But it's so important to have that professional help. It really is. Because you never want to put yourself in a situation, and this is true for any type of abuse, not just sexual abuse, but you don't want to put yourself in a situation where you're kind of re-traumatized or you continue to be abused on some level, and the denial of your truth, the denial of your abuse is abuse. Especially if it's by the abuser. And you don't want to put yourself in that situation because it has, even if consciously it doesn't feel like it, even if consciously you're able to say, I don't care what you think, if you're not working with somebody to really understand the impact that it's having on you, then on a deeper level, the ideas that you don't matter, that your truth doesn't matter, are being reinforced, and that's having an impact on your ability to fully heal. I'm hoping that this is kind of making sense because I know there's just so many caveats. There's too many nuances with each individual person and their perpetrator and the dynamic of the relationship and how other people fit into that. There's so many things to take into consideration. So it's really difficult to just say yes or no. In my own experience, so all but one of the abusers that I had in my life were no longer in my life when I started to heal. And the person who was my brother, the person that I still continued to maintain a relationship with. But as I continued to heal, so not in the early stages, I was still around him. We sometimes would even go over for a dinner or something like that, or just a pool party or whatever. My brother and I had a lot of difference in age, and I never felt close to my brother. I wasn't raised with my brother, but I did live with him for a period of time in my teen years, because he was already out on his own and married and all of that. I had done a lot of healing, but I can tell you that, and this is for me, this is my experience, other people's experiences may be different, but for me, when I was around him, even though I had done a lot of healing, I just felt, and I never confronted him at that point, I just never felt fully comfortable. So what I did was I avoided him. I would try not to converse with him. I just kind of would have conversations over here. And that worked to an extent. But every time I would leave there, I knew, even if I was unconsciously thinking about it, I knew that I was silenced in a sense. And I didn't realize this until later, after he was no longer in my life. But I was silenced every time that I was around him. I denied my own discomfort because I didn't want anybody to know, because I was afraid that people wouldn't believe me. And that wasn't a conscious thought in my mind every time I was around. In fact, at the time, I don't think it was ever an actual conscious thought. But later, as I did more healing, when he was no longer in my life, I realized the impact that that had on me. Now, was I able to do a lot of healing? Was I able to really work on my underlying beliefs, my core beliefs, and do a lot of healing around that? Was I able to speak my truth in many ways? Absolutely. I think I even acknowledged that I had 3 abusers, but I didn't talk about who they were, or at least not who 2 of them were. I certainly didn't talk about who my 3rd abuser was. And when we feel like we can't talk about it because we don't want to rock the boat, we don't want other people to know, we don't want other people to feel bad, we don't want the family to fall apart, we fear being disbelieved. We fear and believe that people are not going to believe us. And so we stay quiet. And that has an impact on the depth of healing that you're able to really do. And in my case, it ended up coming out at one point. He kind of, whenever I would go back home, because I had moved away, when I would go back home, I didn't go visit because I didn't want to. And he had remarried, and she was a nice person, but I didn't really have a relationship with her. His children were grown, and so I didn't have to see him any longer. And so I didn't. And people sometimes question that, like, well, why are you not going to go see him? And my own husband, who didn't know, why are you not going to go see him? And I would make an excuse about time or something. And then eventually it ended up coming out. I did end up sharing with somebody that he had abused me. I was asked a question about who my 3rd abuser was, and I was panicked because I thought, oh my God, I can't say it. I can't tell. But I did. And I am so fortunate that that person believed me. And of course, I'm getting a little emotional about that because, and the reason it still brings up so much emotion, and this is kind of the interesting piece, because I was most terrified of anybody finding out about him, because I truly believed that people would not believe me. I believed that people would take his side. And if it had come out sooner, the reality is there's a good chance that would have happened. But the person that I told believed me. And the healing that happened in that moment was something that I didn't know that I needed. It was something that I thought was already healed because I had kind of set that boundary and was no longer interacting with him really. But in that moment, to be believed, the healing just was and subsequent, it was in that moment and it happened afterwards as well, was so incredibly powerful. And from that point, the healing that I was able to do beyond that, I experienced it at a much deeper level. Now, that doesn't mean, like, I had already done a lot of healing. I was already in private practice at that point. But I was able to release so much more that I didn't even know that I was holding on to. And I'm not saying that that would have to be the case for everybody, but after that, having that experience and also working with other people with that new kind of recognition and seeing it come through with other people, there is something that we hold back when we deny ourselves the ability to be completely truthful and open with ourselves, with our desires, our needs, and the people around us. When we feel that we have to keep something a secret, whether it's to protect ourselves, protect the abuser, or not make other people feel bad, it has an impact on us. It reinforces the idea, the belief that we don't matter as much as other people do. So remember at the beginning, I was saying you can do a lot of healing, but there's going to be these other pieces. That's part of that. We can believe that we matter in lots of other ways, and the healing that we can experience can go a long, long, long way. And I want to express that because I don't want people feeling like, well, I don't think I could ever cut off a relationship with my abuser, so I guess I just won't try to heal because what's the point? Absolutely not. Please, please, please don't even allow yourself to consider that possibility from this video. Because I do want you to recognize that you can do some incredible healing. And sometimes what will happen is as you continue to navigate this healing process, even though in the beginning you might have said, oh my God, I could never tell people, I could never cut off a relationship with that person. As you heal, you might not be saying never anymore. You may get to a place where you feel differently, just like I did, where I got to a place where I felt like, okay, I don't need to go visit. I don't need to have a conversation. But earlier, in the earlier years, even in just maybe a year before, that was the case. So as you navigate this healing process, what feels absolutely impossible at one point no longer feels impossible at another. But I do want to express again the importance. This is so important. You need to have a therapist who is trained specifically in working with survivors of sexual abuse, who understands the depth and the breadth of what it means. And not just from I took a trauma training course and now I can do this or I can do that and heal your trauma. No, not saying that maybe some of those things couldn't play a part in your experience. But to heal from childhood sexual abuse, you have to work with somebody who understands that the long-term impact is about the belief that you have in yourself, what you interpreted the abuse experience to mean for who you are in the world, and then understand what it takes to undo all of that, to to do the deprogramming of all of that so that you can step fully into the truth of who you've always been. And that is hard to find. And I so wish that I had a vast resource list that I could give you, but I don't. And what works for one person is going to be different than what works for somebody else too. So I just want you to search for people that have experience in childhood trauma, who don't just do this technique or that technique to heal the trauma, that they really understand all of those dynamics and are willing to sit with you through the time that it takes to do that work. And it's okay. It's more than okay for you to ask those questions. And maybe you can't find that person. It doesn't mean don't go to therapy. It means find somebody who you feel like you have some sort of connection with and you can do some work. And then maybe at some point, whether it's a few months or a year or whatever, maybe you do another search, because I do think there can be benefit in working with somebody for a period of time and then maybe working with somebody else for a period of time. Or maybe you do individual with one person and you do some group work with some other people. So please don't give up on that. Please don't give up on your healing. Don't give up on finding a therapist who can help you navigate all of this. And not just in the US, but in other countries as well, there are rape crisis centers that work with survivors of childhood abuse. They also have local resources that they can also refer you to. So just do an internet search for rape crisis with your zip code or province or whatever that is in your area. Rape crisis, that will typically get you at least an idea of what you're looking for. Many states, many countries have like organizations or coalitions for sexual violence or sexual assault. You can search there as well to find what is more kind of a local thing that you might be able to contact. So to kind of wrap this up, can you heal when you still have a relationship with your abuser? To an extent. But you have to do the work of healing to a certain point so that you're aware of the impact that it continues to have on you, so that you can set some boundaries, recognize what those boundaries are that you need, and set those boundaries. But there's likely going to be some pieces that you'll still need to heal, that will still kind of be floating out there, might be more easily triggered when you do have an ongoing relationship with your abuser. So if you have any questions about that, and I know everybody's situation is going to be a little bit different, but if you've got questions, please leave them here. Whether you're watching this on YouTube, you can leave them here. If you're watching this somewhere else, please feel free to leave them there, though I'm more likely to be able to see it probably if you leave the comments here on YouTube. So thank you, Jody, for your question. Thank you all for watching. Thank you for so courageously stepping into this journey and honoring yourself to learn, to heal, to grow, connecting to your courage on this journey. Have a beautiful rest of your day. Bye.